Well, hello and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining me today for this webinar, Social Media for Accountants and Advisors. If you've not met me before, my name's Michael Carter, commonly referred to as MC. I'm the founder of Practice Paradox. And thank you for joining us for this topic, which is all about social media for accountants and advisors. And in particular, because that's quite a big topic, in particular today, we're looking at the time-efficient content curation tools and services. You'll notice that today it's a bit different. Instead of using a slide deck that we usually use, we're using a tool called MindMeister, which is a mind mapping tool that's based in the cloud. Now, the first question, as far as social media goes, clearly is where should I start? And even if you've already started, if you've lost momentum or you're wondering what return you're getting from your social media activities, the first question is clearly always start with strategy. Now, we cover this in depth in our masterclasses and in the academy, but let's run through some basics of your strategy. You need a clear target audience. Definitely do not try to be all things to all people, because you'll end up being nothing to nobody. They've never built a hall of fame to a generalist. So when you are lacking in focus in content-driven marketing, the problem with that is that you're just saying the same thing as all of your competition, and you will get lost in the noise. And these days there is a lot of noise in social media, a lot of messages. So unless you've got something different to say to a unique group of people, I wouldn't even bother with social media if I were you. So in terms of getting clear on your target audience, we've run through in our last marketing masterclass around blogging. And also in the previous one around marketing automation, we taught the principle that's known as buyer personas, or these days sometimes called buyer avatars, which essentially is a fictional person or a fictional number of people who represent, it's an imaginary person that you're targeting. You give them a name, they might have a gender or not, and they've got characteristics, the way they think, how they live, their demographics, who they are, so that your content can speak directly to them. So you need to connect with them. Now, the type of content into social media, as you probably know by now, is your aim is to educate. Now, I assume, because we've been teaching social media to accountants and advisors now for over 6 years and we're the first to do so, we sometimes forget what we know in terms of we forget to emphasize things. Now, this is a given. The aim of your content-driven marketing is to educate people, or in other words, just to help them. And that leads to you influencing them. But just last night, I happened to see a LinkedIn update from someone. It was nicely presented in terms of the graphics, but it was basically an ad. It was essentially saying, here at such and such, we can help you with all your needs from this and this and this. Man, imagine being at a barbecue or a party or a social gathering and someone walked in and just blurted that out. It's social media, it's a social interaction. So you can't be overtly promotional. There's an art and a science to it, but all you need to think of is, who am I communicating with and what do I need to teach them? There's a lot more we can run into that, but that's not the focus of today's presentation, of course. So what is your business strategy for using social media? There's a lot of social media consultants and advisors out there, most of whom think that social media is the be-all and end-all. We certainly do not. We see social media as being one string to your marketing bow. That's all it is. But these days, it's an important one. It's one that can't be ignored. It's one that you cannot be incompetent or worse, maybe ignorant of. It's a common tool these days. All it is a channel for communication, but also for just for monitoring, listening, also publishing and engaging. So you need to have a business strategy around it. But as far as we're concerned, forget about the brand focused things, even though you will reinforce and build a brand and recognition. At the end of the day, you want leads, you want inquiries, new clients. So upstream from those numbers are metrics such as traffic to your website. So people, unique visitors, they call them, coming to your website. So you can actually track the traffic, the visits to your website that are coming from the different social media platforms. Google Analytics, which is a free tool that should be implemented on your website, though most people don't have a clue, quite rightly, because it's very complex. Most people are not really aware of how they can log in and how they can drill into these statistics, which is why we exist. But you can track easily and clearly how much traffic your website is getting from social media. So clearly that's important, because if your website is good, it will then convert that traffic onto your list. And by that, we mean your marketing database. So that is your email marketing database. A broader definition of that is also it will grow your connections in things like LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Google+, other platforms you might be using. And lastly, the brand positioning, it will happen by default. But our view with measurable, kind of guerrilla marketing, if you like, that it should always be focused on a measurable return on investment. And any of those warm and fuzzies that are harder to measure around brand perception, whilst they are important, difficult to measure, and they'll just happen anyway if you publish good quality content. So what types of content should you share, publish into social media? It's a good question, and it's one that fills a lot of people with uncertainty and maybe even fear. There's two main types of content. Now, the first is content creation. Now, with content creation, that's obviously things that you're creating, and there's a whole raft of those. And we love seeing accounting firms do great stuff in these areas, which is why we teach you how to do it, and we also do aspects of this for you, for example, around blogging. But think about how often you're publishing blog posts to your website that are targeting specific people about specific topics, and they're teaching things. They're adding value. They're helping people realize things that before they read your article, they mightn't have been fully aware of, that then lead to your helping them further through eventually advisory services. But your blog post should never be sell, 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 just like your social media. They can mention things, that's called seeding, but they should not be overtly promotional. They should not sound like a brochure. Okay. Now, with the other types of content, when you've got an idea and you publish it, there are many forms that idea could be published, and one is videos and also webinars, so visual formats. Other things that you can do that dramatically grow your list growth are ebooks, reports, downloadable lead magnets is one term to describe that. So lead magnets are things that add value to people. They read them or watch them or do them, and they benefit from them. But they'll come to your website to download those. Now, you can gate those things, meaning you might ask them for their email address in order for them to access or download it. And that's fine. But you don't have to gate and protect all of your content in that way if you don't want to. But you can certainly test both approaches. Other types of content that's really effective for attracting interest and buzz and engagement and growing your list are surveys, quizzes, and polls. That's another reason why it's great to have an industry focus or a specialization perhaps on a demographic. One of the graduates of our Modern Marketing Academy that some of you may know of is Inspire CA. And they've got a really strong target market segment around young families in business. So they do a whole lot of content around that. And one of the things they do are surveys and quizzes and polls through social media, such as their Facebook page, which last time I looked had over 1,000 members to it, which is pretty good for a small kind of a startup firm in its early years. Other types of content is audio podcasts. Podcasts are surprisingly easy to create if you've got the voice talent, if you like, on top of the content to share. And that voice talent doesn't have to be your voice. It could be someone else in the firm, but it needs to be authentic. Don't get professional voice talent to come in and read a script of your content. It needs to be you, it needs to be real. But clearly there's a challenge, isn't there, with all of this content creation? There's the time and the effort, and there's cost. If you do it entirely in-house, there's a cost. There's direct costs, there's opportunity costs of other things you could be doing. And when you outsource aspects of it to people like Paradox, there's clearly an out-of-pocket cost. Nonetheless, you do need to consistently be publishing content that is your own. But if that's all you shared, you probably wouldn't share too much. So the other aspect is content curation. So as opposed to creation, curation, just like a gallery or a museum hasn't actually created the pieces or the works of art in there, but the curator has selected them. So by selecting them, they're applying their judgment, they're putting their stamp of approval and saying, this is really good stuff. Likewise, that's how the term content curation in social media has evolved. Now, this is a much easier way for you to maintain a consistent social media presence because you're just finding cool content articles, for example, videos, other things, and you're sharing them with people that you're connected to in social media. So that's third-party articles from non-competing websites. So that's other blogs, authors, speakers, thought leaders, even complimentary advisors who might either directly be in your referral inner circle or just someone who you've noticed in social media that speaks the truth, that shares wisdom and good insights, and just it's good karma in a way. You add value to people by sharing their content because that will send traffic to their website. Why do you want to send traffic to their website? Well, it's not your first objective, but it does happen by virtue of sharing it. But we'll come back to that point later about driving traffic. Also, things that are happening just within your sector. So whether you're an accountant or financial planner or bookkeeper or any type of business, if there's something notable going on in your industry or even generally that you want to comment on, that's the sort of thing that you can share if, let's say, there's a news item. But it's important to not just be, just blindly publishing out quotes, and you see all sorts of interesting activity on social media. But just always keep in mind that analogy of you're sitting at a table at a dinner party, let's say. Or if you don't do the dinner party thing, I know I no longer do, I have children. But let's say you're at a barbecue or a party or something, and you're having a conversation. Imagine if a person was sitting next to you and every couple of minutes they just said a famous quote. Be okay if they kind of happen to weave one into the conversation occasionally if it was topical. That reminds me of that quote. That'd be okay. But if that's all I said, that'd be weird. But you see people often, say in LinkedIn or Twitter, where they've set up some automation and they just keep spewing out all these quotes. Don't do that. You can do that, but don't have that dominating what it is that you share. Now, when you publish, we'll talk about selection of social media platforms in a moment. But when you publish, you do them out into, obviously, Twitter, LinkedIn, Google+, Facebook page, or whatever platforms are a fit for your network. So this does add value to your followers and connections. You will get thanked. I remember once at one of our marketing masterclasses, our workshops, a member from Perth mentioned an app. And I said, oh, yeah, that's a great app. How did you hear about that? He said, you? I said, I don't recall ever mentioning that. He said, no, I saw something in Twitter from you about that months ago. I went, cool. He goes, yeah, I've been using it. It's been brilliant. So you do add value. You're sharing the love. But another thing that happens is you're effectively basking in the reflected glory, or at least the reflected authority of the great content that you're sharing. As a parallel to that, if you've ever had a conversation with a client or a colleague of a book, let's say it's a business or professional or philosophical self-development type book, not maybe something fictional, but you share that you're reading this book and they've maybe read it or they're interested in the topic, it creates a connection, it creates an affinity, and you're actually seen in a better light by sharing that. Same thing happens with content curation. Now, the other benefit is you are achieving a more consistent presence in social media feeds. That imagine you did 1 or 2 blog posts a month and you only promoted those. People are only seeing you once or twice a month if you only promoted those at the time of publishing. You should re-promote your blog posts as well if they're evergreen, but we'll come to that again in a moment today. But by sharing third-party content, you can be doing a couple of updates a day, shares of articles, and just have those ticking along. And that's 2 a day, can be more. We don't recommend less than that in general, because people, when they sign up to our social media update service, they say, gee, 2 a day, that's a lot. Well, not really. Your social media feeds are not like an email inbox that's like a bucket that fills up and people feel obligated to, look at it all and process it. They call them feeds or streams for a reason. They flow past. And there are days, and certainly passages in a day, where someone might not look at their social media at all and just miss what you posted that morning or that evening. So 1 in the first half of the day, 1 in the last half of the day, you're increasing your chances that your followers will see what it is you're publishing without inundating them. Now, there's some really cool browser extensions. I highly recommend that you use Chrome as your browser because there's a plethora of extensions, so little add-ons, extra functions you can add to social media apps that when you're reading an article, it makes it really quick to go, oh, I'm going to share that, click, 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 done. So that can be done with apps such as Buffer and CoSchedule and Edgar that we're going to talk about in more detail today. So some of the challenges, even with content curation, is finding the time. If you were to share 60 articles in a month, let's say, that 2 a day average, in our experience, when we curate 60 a month for our subscribers, you'd be lucky if 1 in 5 articles that you look at is share-worthy. So, there's 300 articles to peruse across a month. Now, if you chip away at that consistently each day, you can do that, but you still need to find the time. Now, you need to share it periodically rather than in a torrent of tweets, I call it. Have you ever looked at your LinkedIn or any of your social media, and from the one particular contact, you see, let's call them messages, because in Twitter they're tweets, in LinkedIn they're updates, in Facebook they're posts or shares. So let's just call them messages. So depending what platform you're looking at. And it's message from the same person. It fills up your whole screen. That's a torrent, I call it. And that's almost rude. Now, what's happened there is they've gone and grabbed a coffee or two, let's say, and they've logged on to some of their news sites, or they might be reading some of their favorite websites through a tool like Feedly, which is an RSS aggregator. It's an app that allows you to read all your favorite blogs and websites in the one little app and screen. And let's say they find 10 good articles. There's no way in the world they should publish those 10 articles or even 3 articles right then and there. They should queue them up. And there are some really cool apps to show you how to do that I'll share with you today. So you want to get those the right apps and tools, because you can have too many tools and that will just confuse you. It makes it harder to train your team and getting them involved. So you want as few apps as possible that are going to achieve the objectives. And you do need to enlist help. If let's say you're a 1 or 2 partner firm and you're one of the partners, and let's say there's 10, 20 people, 7, whatever, in the firm, you're the only person doing the social media, you're a lone hand. It's hard work. There is a workflow in social media, and with certain apps, you can put in place the ability for other people in your firm to suggest things to share and post, but put it in draft for approval, so that if need be, you can have, just like you have a sign off on work going out the door in your business, you can do the same with your content if you want to. It does create a bottleneck, but does give you a bit of control. You can certainly apply controls like that to people who might be brand new to helping you curate and share content out into social media. Now, what apps are available to make the process time efficient? Let's have a look at a couple of different categories of apps. So there are native apps for each social media platform. So the apps that come with the platform. So Twitter, they have their own apps. They actually, on smartphones, acquired a third-party app that now is just called Twitter. But clearly you can use Twitter in the browser, on your smartphone and in the tablet. Same with LinkedIn, same with Google+, same with Facebook and so on. Now, interestingly, the native apps, even though there's all these other apps that I'm about to share with you, with some apps like LinkedIn and Twitter, you'll often find that the native apps are the best apps for engagement. Engagement meaning getting fast notifications of when people interact with you, when they like or share or comment or mention you. Generally speaking, the native apps are fastest because they control the data, whereas they make available that data to third-party apps through the API, and often those APIs are called at intervals, so there are delays in it coming through. So there's definitely a place for native apps, but in and of themselves, they're not enough, not in a business context. So there are things called social media dashboards that allow you to manage multiple social media platforms and even multiple social media accounts of the same platform. So for example, you might have a LinkedIn company account and a LinkedIn personal account. You might have multiple LinkedIn personal accounts for the different people in the firm, same with Twitter. Social media dashboard is really quite useful in that regard. However, the lines have become blurred in recent years with some other specialty apps that I'll share with you in a moment. Now, I'll just check in, by the way, with my co-pilot today, Tiffany Carter, no relation despite that great last name. Tiff, if you could just message me in Slack to let me know that the audio and the screen and everything's going okay, that would be cool. New technology, sometimes leading edge can be bleeding edge if things don't work out. So we've got this pan effect going today, which puts more of a demand than just a slide appearing. Okay, let's talk about social media apps. One of the most popular and well-known is called Hootsuite. Now, Hootsuite, I'll give you a personal opinion, I can't stand it. But a lot of people love it. There's a free version, there's a fairly low-cost version, but we're design Nazis at Paradox. Or maybe I should clean up the pronouns there. Many of us are. I certainly am, having an industrial design degree. And the interface is abhorrent. The interface is complex and ugly. However, it's functional. And in Hootsuite, you can have multiple columns, and each column in your Hootsuite screen, so let's say on a secondary monitor that you're using, you keep an eye on through the day, could be, for example, one stream might be everyone you follow on Twitter. Another column might be a hashtag for a conference that you're following. Another column might be every time someone mentions or retweets your content in Twitter, or an engagement interaction in LinkedIn. So it allows you, it's a bit like an air traffic controller. It's seeing all of the aeroplanes in motion and allows you to kind of stay on top of interaction. So in that regard, it's good. And if you're using it and you love it, that's great. That's just the way that your brain is wired. If you like that interface, and that's fine. Another one that we used to use and that we love is Sprout Social. However, there's an issue with it that I'll come to. Now, Sprout Social is very easy to use and beautifully designed. And rather than have all of these different columns with all of these different, and by the way, with Hootsuite, there's also lots of different tabs. So I find with Hootsuite, things can be out of sight, out of mind anyway, because the screen is so cluttered. Whereas with Sprout Social, it has what they call a unified inbox, or one inbox, where all of your notifications and messages that you decide you want in there come into the one column, if you like, or the one inbox. And in a way, that's simpler, because there's just one thing you need to run your eye down, not run your eye down a whole bunch of different things. So it's beautiful. It's easy to use. You can collaborate with team members on it. But here's the catch. US dollars, it's $99 a month per user. Now, for a lot of small businesses and smaller firms, if you want that collaboration, that can be kind of out of the question, because that adds up pretty quickly. If it was 20% of that cost, I'd be saying, go for it. But cost is a real consideration amongst all the other cloud-based apps that today many of us subscribe to in our businesses. Agora Pulse, I think that's how it's pronounced, is another one in that same category. Another dashboard, but it's solely for Twitter, is TweetDeck. So that used to be an independent app. Twitter acquired it, and it's really good for Twitter engagement. So if you weren't using other social media platforms much, and we will cover today which social media platforms are a good choice. But let's say you're a really heavy user of Twitter. When you're on your normal computer, and particularly if you have a secondary monitor or two, TweetDeck is brilliant, because even though it's multi-column, here, this column here is tracking a hashtag of a conference I went to in Arizona recently. Notifications, another hashtag, messages, mentions, notifications, and you can filter on that and you get notifications. So if you're wanting to be right on top of things and have timely responses, particularly say to a hashtag in Twitter. And by the way, today's purpose of today is not to drill into any detail on how to use Twitter. That's things that we do in specialist topics with members, usually and occasionally in public webinars like this too. But TweetDeck's good just for Twitter. Now, these social media dashboards, whichever ones you're using, they allow you to do a few different things. They allow you to monitor, and I love the notion that today you cannot afford to not be using social media in your business, even if it is just to listen. Even if it is just to be a lurker, as they call it, where you're not actually publishing anything, even though we highly recommend that, and that's what we're talking about today, but just listening. You can listen to mentions of your own brand name, or your own name, or your competitors' brand names, or things that are of interest to you. When people like your posts in the different social media platforms, you can track these things and then engage further and have conversations. And obviously when someone actually replies to you, whether it's a direct message in something like Twitter or instant messenger in Facebook or a reply in LinkedIn, You want to know when they're there. You don't want them buried. And yes, all of these platforms can push you email notifications, but I'm guessing you probably get enough emails into your inbox already. So it's good to kind of compartmentalize the notifications separately. And you can also track just general keywords. And I'll just share with you an example. Everything we teach, we always essentially test it on ourselves first. You know, we walk our talk, and we track marketing for accountants. Not surprisingly, we're number one in Google for that. That hasn't happened by accident, but there's various phrases that we track, and it popped up in the app that we're using to track this phrase, marketing for accountants, a conference happening in the United States. This one's in New Orleans, or I've recently been told, no, it's New Orleans. There's a conference coming up, and they were calling for speakers. So there was a call for papers, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. I saw the tweet. I clicked through. I went to the webpage. The deadline was that day for actually submitting your paper to speak at the conference. And I thought, well, there's no time like the present. Did that, and in a couple of Mondays' time, I'll be jumping on a plane, flying to New Orleans, and speaking to a room full of 450 people who are bang on in the target market that we help primarily. We also help beyond that. But that came from monitoring social media. And the same things happen in all sorts of businesses. I know plenty of accounting and business advisory firms that have newspaper columns, regular radio interviews that has stemmed from their social media activity, engagement. So that's alone is reason enough to be listening in and monitoring social media. But obviously publishing. So when you publish, there's three types of publish, sort of timing. And this is a core part of what we're covering today. You can publish something immediately, but as in the example earlier, if you come across more than one thing you want to share, don't do it immediate. You can instead schedule things out. Now, take a moment now to think through what are some things that you could schedule, meaning a particular date and a particular time of day or night that it could go out. So examples are, let's say you were doing an event, be it an actual workshop, or let's say it was a webinar, or it might be a deadline that your clients have to either lodge things by, pay things by, get information into you by, whatever it might be. These are known dates. So using the social media dashboard apps, you can schedule these things out in advance and in one setting. Just sit down and schedule out weeks, if not months in advance. So schedule's really cool, but not everything. Scheduling is kind of laborious compared to the third type of publishing, which is queuing it. So queuing it is where you add it to a queue for it to just get drip fed out at intervals, and at intervals that you can define. It might be twice a day, the example I said earlier. It might be twice a day on weekdays and not on weekends, or 3 times a day on weekends and maybe once only on the mornings and weekends. You can decide with the different apps the timing of your queues, but with content curation in particular, it doesn't really matter the exact time and date that it goes out, because it's not contextual to a particular event or deadline that will pass. So you just queue them up. Now there's 2 types of queues, and this is important in relation to the apps that I'm about to share with you. There are finite queues that will eventually run out. So Buffer is one app that we'll talk a little bit more about in a moment. And with Buffer, as it stands at the moment, their queues run out, meaning let's say you shared 6 different articles and you had your buffer set to share 2 posts a day out to the different social media platforms. After 3 days, those 6 are gone. And I kind of get a wry smile if Buffer will send you a notification that's like a celebration. Hey, well done. Your buffer is empty. Well, actually, no, you're just saying, actually, it's time to fill it up again because it's run out. So that's finite. They finish. But the other type that I love is in the mix. You do all of these. It's not either or. Are repeating or recycling queues that never run out. Now, there are blog posts that you do, and this is the focus that we help people with content, is blog posts that don't date. So if a blog post that you post today or this week will be just as relevant in another month or 3 or 6 or year, you can add it to a mechanism, an app, that will repeatedly promote it at intervals that you can define without it appearing repetitive to any of your followers, keeping in mind that people don't see everything that you publish. It would be egotistical of any of us to think that, yes, everything we publish in social media, there are people out there reading it all. Sadly, they don't. They catch glimpses of it. Another thing to keep in mind is that when you publish a blog post, if you promote it at the time of publishing out into your LinkedIn and Twitter and other social media, HubSpot looked at some data. HubSpot's an American marketing automation and content publishing platform, which is very powerful, but I think it's priced about 3 times what it should be for what it does compared to other apps. Anyway, at that first publish, there's only about 14% of your audience will see that promotion of that post. So 14%. So, 86% of people didn't know about that great blog post that you put up. So therefore, it just makes sense to, if it's evergreen, to promote it again and again and again. And that's what queuing's all about, which I love. Now, the other thing that, another thing that they can do, these apps, is a social CRM. Now, you should already have a CRM in terms of the information about your clients, which is usually much more in-depth than a practice management system that's focused on time and billing. A true CRM has all sorts of information about the relationships, survey results, all the different social media accounts, kind of a really deep dossier on each client that you have, so that you truly, really understand where they're coming from. Now, social CRM allows you to see a history of all interaction that you've had with a particular contact back for years. If they've liked you or retweeted you, or you've had direct messages back and forth, all in the one spot. Useful. And you can also apply notes and tags to contacts. So let's say you see someone, you think, oh, they're in our target market, I might tag them as a prospect. Or, okay, that's a radio journalist or a print media journalist in our area of expertise. I might just tag them. For example, in Twitter, you can create lists, specific lists that can be public, that others can see, or private, that only you and your team, if they've got login credentials, will see. Also, prospective employees. I think social media is a terrific way to attract, if you're looking to attract modern, digitally up-to-date, savvy people. Social media is awesome for that. I remember one of our brilliant copywriters, and I know, looking down the list of who's in the session, many of you love what Bill does when he polishes up your blog posts. But one of our copywriters, I just went to Twitter, went to the Twitterverse, and it was on a Saturday, as I recall it. And I just said, hey, peeps, does anyone know a really good copywriter who's great at polishing and SEOing blog posts? I didn't know who would reply. And Valerie Khoo, who's the founder of the Australian Writers Centre, based in Sydney, but it's national, came back with, Bill's your man. And that's how we met. And Bill's been doing awesome work with us now for years. So prospective employees is a great way that you can tag people as well. Now, collaboration. This is really important. And the collaboration aspect is not something you will get easily with the native apps. Frankly, I think they should build it in, and it would help them monetize their platforms a bit better. E.g., Twitter's been scratching its head for years trying to work out how it's actually going to generate some returns for its investors. It's trying to do it through advertising. They should make it easier to have multi-user accounts for collaboration. But that's already handled by social media dashboard accounts. So by collaboration, what we're talking about is, let's say it's only 2 people in your business. And let's say someone mentions you in Twitter or any of the social media accounts, and they're asking you a question, publicly asking you a question, or they've retweeted something you've done or liked it. There's protocol in social media to thank them for that. And obviously, if they're asking a question, you need to reply. Well, the left hand needs to know what the right hand is doing. So it would look bad if no one responded, and it would look bad if you both responded. So clearly, you need to be able to kind of say, hey, I've got that one, or hey, can you handle that one? So you can assign team members to handle the different messages as they come through, and avoid that double handling, which is inefficient, and double up, which is a bad look. Now, I've mentioned a few of these already, so let's just talk about them in a little bit more detail. Now, this is where the lines are getting a bit blurred over the years, because, for example, Hootsuite now can do queuing. Sprout Social can also do queuing, but the reason they do queuing is that apps such as Buffer came into being. And the whole idea with Buffer is you can add things to a queue, and you can publish to multiple different social media networks simultaneously. And if you just keep adding things to your buffer, and I'll show you an example of that in a moment, and you keep your buffer topped up, your little social media updates, your content curation shares will just keep ticking over at the intervals that you like. Now, it's really well designed. It does what it does really well, and it's a focused specialist app in this area. There's a free version. The free version has certain limitations. There is a buffer business. There's a small business plan as well. But again, I think it also does have some limitations, though it's fairly good at what it does. You might be thinking, hey, MC, can you actually show me some of this stuff? Well, I'm glad you asked. Now, let's have a look at something. Let's say I wanted to share this page. The way that's presented, probably not, but don't quote me. So when you've got the buffer browser extension here, and I'm in Google Chrome on Mac, you click buffer, and once you do the one-time sort of setup in there, you can say, what would you like to share? And with your different social media accounts that you connect to your buffer account, you can turn, just ignore that for a moment, I'll come back to that, it's a different app. Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter Business, that's our Practice Paradox one, Twitter Personal, our LinkedIn group for marketing and innovation for accountants and advisors, our LinkedIn company page, our Facebook page, our Google Plus page, and there's a couple of other little test accounts there. Now, it would be unwise to post to all of those all in one go, but by way of an example, I'll just do a little update here. You never just leave the wording as it comes in, because the wording is just pulling the title of that page. So I'm going to put here, looking forward to sharing the latest in innovation for accountants in New Orleans in May. And let me say, I'll do that one, say to LinkedIn and there. And it will tell you if your update is too long. For example, if it's just, let's say I was just doing, say, Twitter. If it gets longer than the number of characters, it might be difficult for you to see, but it's actually highlighted in red at the moment. So I will just go. These guys have an acronym. And then add to queue, or if I wanted to, I could share it now, or I could schedule it, or I could just put it very next in the queue, but I'll just go add to queue, adding to your buffer, and that's going to get published. Now that little thing that popped out in the corner before, if you noticed that, I'll talk about that in a moment. It's super cool, but it's a different app. Okay, so that's buffer. Very good at what it does for queuing things up and scheduling things, and it also gives you analytics. Another specialist app that does it in incredible depth is a monitoring tool that you can monitor, as its name suggests, mentions of you, any keywords, anyone that you're wanting to track. And it's useful, but you could imagine that if each of these is costing 20, 30, 40, 50 US dollars, let's say, a month, before you know it, you could be spending a lot of money. But it is an app that is worth checking out if you're a larger business and you're prepared to invest in even closer monitoring of mention of your brand, competitors, industry topics, and the like. Now, one of the problems that Buffer's had is it's a finite schedule. Now that has led to the birth of Edgar. Now, can I just see a raise of hand through the Zoom interface? Just raise your hand if you've heard of Edgar before as an app. Okay, let's have a look. So far, Chris has raised his hand, and there's many dozens of you in there. 2 Chris's and a Michaela. Oh, Chris and Michaela, you're from the same firm. And you're at our last masterclass too. But Simon, okay, cool. I'll just lower everyone's hands. What Edgar allows you to do is have different queues that can be based on topics or categories, and they recycle. They never run out. So you could have queues based on, let's say, something. And by the way, don't publish content about compliance and tax and the core of what you do. Most of your followers in your network just expect you guys to look after that sort of stuff for them. don't publish to your peers, publish to your clients and your prospective clients. But let's say some of your topics were, how to better manage a business, or the ins and outs of startup entrepreneurship, or cash flow management, or tax planning, the tips for businesses and investors, or it might be around investing in property. Whatever those different topics are, in Edgar, you can set up different categories of those and add to each of those separately, and they will cycle. And then you can have a calendar saying, all right, I'm going to send out a motivational quote every Monday at 8. And I'm going to send out how did your week go type reflect on your week type question every Friday at 4, your local time. Or I'm going to promote our upcoming events that let's say you did events every Wednesday. You could set up a whole bunch of different updates to go to your different social media accounts every, say, Wednesday afternoon, saying you're joining us tomorrow, click here to see our upcoming events. So that's what Edgar does, but that's all it does. And for what it does, kind of expensive. It's about $50 US a month just for that. Now, it's nicely designed, really well done. Just between you, me, and the lamppost, I think it's going to get killed by Buffer. I've heard it on the grapevine that Buffer has in beta, well, it was more than that. They granted me access to features that are Edgar-like coming, but only in the business editions and beyond in Buffer. But it's a great thing, isn't it? Because it's a pain when your queues run out. If you've got a lot of stuff in your Buffer and it's evergreen, most of your network didn't see them last time you shared them anyway. So Edgar just makes sure that you never go quiet on the social media publishing front. All right, so some of the challenges around that, it still takes time and labor, and therefore cost, at least opportunity, if not direct cost, to find this content and load it up. And as I've covered, those subscriptions, if you subscribe to 3, 4, 5, 6 different apps, before you know it, if you've got a good accountant, they might be doing a cost expense audit on you, might be saying, hey, what's with all these different apps? I know I get that from my business partner, Stuart, who is a chartered accountant, quite rightly. Now, here's a key thing, and it leads to a point I'm going to make about another app, which blows my mind. Content curation, in and of itself, does not directly drive traffic, visitors to your website, does it? You're sending traffic to third-party websites. But it does indirectly because of that basking in the reflected authority effect and growing your network, let's say, within LinkedIn. But that was until Sniply came along. Let me just share with you what Sniply does. Sniply allows you to set up little, they call them snips, but little notifications that when someone clicks a link in your social media that goes to someone else's content on a third-party site that you don't control, on that site, could be entrepreneur.com, it could be Xero's blog, it could be anything. In one of the corners, you define, let's say bottom left corner, a little notification, like an advertisement, but just a little subtle little notification comes up promoting something that you want to promote. It might be one of the lead magnets that you have, or it might be sending people to your events page or an evergreen blog post. For us, we've got a range of different ones set up around ebooks, around how does your website rate with our website audit tool that's free for you to use on our site. And it's pretty clever. I'll have to thank Drew Grosskreutz from OTM Group, who's one of our star members at Paradox, actually shared this with me one morning. And he explained it. It blew my mind, and I checked it out and went, okay, yeah, that works. It only does not work on websites that don't allow iframes. So in other words, it works on about 99% of websites. With Sniply, it will, I'll show you how it works here. I'm doing a meta snip here. I'm snipping a link to Sniply's own site. So let's say, actually, let's put this one in here. I'll grab that URL and let's say, imagine I was snipping that. You put the URL in there. Then in your Sniply account, you set up different calls to action. So let's say, 10 trends in marketing for accountants. You tell it what you want the video to say. The button to say. You can tell it the style of the look and feel of this. And, other ones we've got here, one advice on how to scale your advisory business, or get your boring versus not boring branding checklist. So there's no limit really to it, depending on your plan. And there's a free Sniply account. And we set our members up with Sniply when we start doing services for them, like social media updates and our blog article service. But look, I'll just pick that one. And I could customize that further, but I won't today. And that link there, when someone clicks on that link, if that's in a social media tweet, I'll just open another link and paste that in, another tab, sorry. When they go to this third-party site, they're still going to the third-party site. So you're still spreading the love and the karma to this third-party site. But there it is there. That's brilliant, because all of a sudden, content curation that was already a good idea has now just doubled, tripled in its ROI benefit to your business. Because when people click the link, they will go straight to the URL that you told that button to go to when you set up the call to action in Sniply. Super cool. And in this case, it's to a blog post where we embedded the webinar recording of the latest trends in marketing for accountants, where we covered the latest 10 trends that we're observing globally. Hands up if you think that's cool. I'm looking down at my other screen when I see that. All right, Cam, Chris, Jeanette, Jill, Murray. Hey, Murray, across the ditch. Perlin, Rihanna, cool. Yeah, good. Just checking that you're actually paying attention. Pretty cool tool. Okay, so the solutions to some of those challenges, and sponsored message on its way. Clearly, we exist to serve a purpose, and our mission is to help you get your message out there and help you do more advisory services with your business clients and investor clients. So options you've got around the time-consuming aspect of content curation include done-for-you services. So our social media update service will find for you each month 60 really high-quality articles to share, and we load them up into your different social media platforms. And we also set up your queues and your timing to your desire. By default, it's twice a day, but we can tweak that. You can have multiple queues for different partners. So that saves 6 to 10 hours a month, probably, by our own estimate in just that aspect, let alone loading it up. Just finding that really good content. We scour, last time I looked in our Feedly account, there were over 225 different websites that we go and find those from. Now, it also includes access, and we've upgraded this service to include access to a Paradox Social app, which is a social media marketing dashboard app. But what this does, we've sourced this out of the UK, this app. It's white label, and we've invested heavily in it. It has the combined functionality of the Hootsuites and the Sprout Socials. It does everything that they can do, and it does what Buffer does, and it does what Edgar does. And it's got beautiful, tight integration with Sniply. So not only will we find those 60 great articles for you, load them into your social media accounts, queue them up in your desired timing, but we will personally go through and snip every single link for you personally to drive traffic back to your website. It's the only service I know of on the planet that's providing that within this space of accountants and business advisors. So next question, how will you measure... if you were saying this, how do we measure our effectiveness and ROI in using social media? It's pretty straightforward, and I'll go through this quickly. Each social media platform does have its own metrics reporting. Twitter has Twitter Analytics. So here's something I prepared a little earlier. So you can log into that. It's just analytics.twitter and then your Twitter handle, and you can go through and see information, see what's working, see what's getting mentioned, see who your top followers are, what your top media tweets. Useful to look at. You're busy. Chances of you logging in looking at it? You tell me. Don't know. Also, LinkedIn company pages. There's statistics available in behind LinkedIn as well. We can go in, and for the different updates that you've posted, you can see the number of impressions, the number of clicks, and whether people are actually engaging with it. LinkedIn Publisher. So LinkedIn Publisher is the back end of LinkedIn Pulse. So if you read the content in LinkedIn Pulse, people who are using LinkedIn Publisher are essentially adding their blog posts to their LinkedIn, which we do, by the way, for subscribers to our custom our custom blog article service. When we load and publish your blog to your website, we also put it in LinkedIn for you. So, you can go through and look at an overview of the long form posts that you've published and get statistics on those things. You can also log in per post at more detailed statistics. And again, if you've got the time and the focus and the resources to do that in-house, the data's there and available for you. Now, with Google Plus, that you have access to the Google dashboard. Everyone does who's got a Google account of any type in terms of Google My Business with Google Analytics and other things. So with Google My Business, you can click through to the Manage page, and there's 2 tabs on Manage page with Google My Business. There's a Home tab, which shows basic statistics, and then there's Insights, which will show you even more detailed insights. And then lastly, Facebook page insights as well. That will drill in and allow you to see what's already working, so you can know what to publish again, so you can maybe even boost, which is essentially advertise, and re-promote posts that work quite well to get them to work even better. But that's a lot of different places to look, and it takes expertise to understand the data. And look, Greg, by the way, Greg's asked, do you use Sniply when you set up the post, etc.? You use Sniply when you're loading your social media messages. So look, I'll come back to that. Now, by the way, everyone, heads up, this is brand new content. You've heard this from me before. We are going to go 10 minutes over the scheduled end time because having not presented this content before, it's always a bit difficult to know. And I don't actually script what I do. Various anecdotes come to mind as I go. You'll never see me do the same presentation twice, much to my own chagrin. Yeah, Greg, you'll do it at the time. You snip it when you're posting it, and you could do that in Paradox Social. You could just do it directly in Snip. If you have the Sniply Chrome extension, you can snip any page when you're on it. All right, so there are stats that are there and available for you. But look, that's what led to us building what we call marketing metrics dashboards, because there's a lot of data in each of those areas. Like even if you were to log into Google Analytics for your website stuff, or the back of Twitter or LinkedIn, it can be bamboozling. And we know which statistics actually matter the most. So what we do with the marketing metrics dashboard is we just put it all onto the one page, a real-time dashboard, your most important metrics. So rather than 60 metrics out of Google Analytics, half a dozen metrics that are the main ones you need to look at. And we also put, your MailChimp, email newsletter metrics, your different social media. And each month, the system sends you an email around about the 3rd of each month saying, hey, there's a new data set available. Click here to check it out. And then we support you by answering questions on any aspect of the data. Now, let me just zoom up on this. This is a screenshot where I have blurred out identifying information for the client. So when you see these little blurry areas, we added that to this screenshot. So here you can see SEO area, different statistics that you can see whether website traffic's increasing or not. And if you're doing blogging and social media, it better be increasing or you're doing something wrong or you're not doing it frequently enough. Is the website converting? What are people searching on to find your site? You want to know that so you can do more blogging around that. What pages are people coming into the site? What pages are they leaving the site? Are we mainly getting new visitors or return visitors? Is there a high bounce rate on the website where people are coming and then leaving again without clicking on anything else? How much time are people spending on the page? And as I look at this website, it has some issues, but that's an opportunity for improvement. MailChimp, recent campaigns. What are the open rates? What are the click-through rates? What engagement are you getting in terms of followers, clicks, interactions on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and even other things like YouTube, Facebook Insights for their advertising if you're doing that. So the whole range of things we can put on there. In this case, they're showing zeros, where this firm has the intention. They've set up a YouTube account, but they have their intention of starting to do video publishing because they're awesome at their blogging and their emails, but they just haven't started on the video yet. So that's another service that we do for members, usually when we're helping them with their content publishing. Keep those questions coming through. I'll keep an eye on them and we'll get to them shortly. So the key metrics are, what is your website traffic from social? So that's available as a metric in Google Analytics, and we put that on your marketing metrics dashboard, which we do. And also, if you use a marketing automation platform, which we do and recommend, something like Infusionsoft, you can generate reports and see of the contacts in your CRM to get a lead source report. Where have they come from? How many have come from Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook. It's brilliantly useful information, and it records that under each contact as well. So you want to see website traffic from social, and you can then actually track conversion of that type of traffic into email subscribers and further interactions. So see how measurable this is? It's not, creative ponytail type advertising agency stuff, which personally I can't stand, because they make their money the more money you spend on advertising. That's pretty old school. All those guys that are on Gruen Transfer and shows like that, they're all from old school agencies, most of them. Anyway, so do this lower cost measurable marketing. Here's a screenshot here out of a CRM showing, and in fact this is out of a widget on a dashboard in Infusionsoft showing that with this CRM, the database grew by 60 new contacts in the last 30 days. So it's 2 a day. And that's what should be happening to your marketing database. If it's not growing as you sleep, you should wake up every morning and have a larger marketing database. Every time you do an email newsletter, you should be emailing to more people than you did last time if you're doing good content marketing. So, pressing question, you've been waiting for this one. Which social media platforms should you use? First piece of advice, focus on 2 or 3. You can publish also to some of the others like Google+. Jury's still out on whether Google+ will become, is here to stay. But for the time being, it's worthwhile publishing things to Google+ for your own SEO or Google rankings. But focus on 2 or 3 tops. Don't dabble across lots and lots of different platforms. It's a bit of an Achilles heel for us. We have to, as an agency, we are aware of and use most of the platforms because of what we do. But you are not an agency. You don't have to. Focus on a couple. So the choice of which platform is right for you is determined by 2 things. It's determined by the target market segments in terms of who you're trying to reach and the style of content that you want to share. So the typical choices, we all know them. LinkedIn, which within that there's LinkedIn Personal, your own personal profile, brief little updates. LinkedIn company page, you may as well have a LinkedIn company page and link everyone in your business's LinkedIn profiles to it. You can publish content to it. LinkedIn Publisher, highly recommended. It's very good for your exposure and your reach. And also LinkedIn groups can be good as well. The Twitter, Google+, Facebook pages. Other ones, more recent trends, are the first 3 here are more visual. So they're images and they're videos. So Instagram, Pinterest, and Snapchat. If you're thinking, hey, what's the relevance of those to me? Well, they might not be relevant. But I do know some firms. One of our very successful graduates of our Modern Marketing Academy, Steph Hines from GrowthWise, they use Instagram really well, but they're very clear on the style of content they publish to Instagram. Some very nicely designed stuff. In fact, I saw a post they did recently that was even sort of compliance deadline related, but it was presented in a cool, funky way. So these are more visual platforms, but something that's really taking off over the last year or so is Facebook groups. So that's Facebook's functionality if you've not used one. Of forums. And personally, I think it's a better platform than the equivalent in LinkedIn. They seem to have a greater vibrancy and people seem to get to know each other a bit better. There's different opinions on the use of Facebook for business, and it may or may not be a fit for who you're targeting, what you provide, and how you want to be perceived in the style of content. So, next question. Who in the firm should be involved in your social media activities? Well, it happens at a few different levels, just as it does with other styles of content, such as your blog articles. So partners, directors, principals, owners, whatever you want to call the boss or bosses, must be involved at the strategy level. So the strategy level is the main decisions of who are we targeting, what are we offering, what's our core message. These groups usually or often get input from third parties, and that's one of the things we're really strong at, is helping you get clear on your strategy. And at this level, though, optionally, you can also get directly involved. You can be at conferences and be doing tweets and replying to stuff and getting involved in conversations. That's your choice. You don't have to, but you must be involved at the strategy level. Then the advisors in the firm can get involved at the engagement and content curation level. So let's say you're a multidisciplinary firm and you cover everything from bookkeeping to standard accounting and tax to maybe risk insurance, financial planning, whole range of different things. So you've got different specialists within the firm. There might be employees, some might be joint venture partners, whatever it might be. You can involve different people in sharing content that's of interest and relates to what it is that they do. And they can be given the permission to just queue it up, publish it out directly if you trust that they're going to do good stuff. Or you could, with a tool like Paradox Social, you could send it for approval and then check it if you wanted to. But involve advisors because they've got the expertise of what is relevant and timely here. Just remember, don't be publishing to your peers, publish to your clients and prospective clients and your referral network, educational things. You're not out to impress people with highly technical information. Now, if you have a marketing coordinator, either officially or informally, maybe it's a role, one of the hats that a support team member wears, clearly they can get hands-on with the curation and queuing related apps of loading content in. And across those different sort of roles within the firm, you can involve everyone. If you're one person startup, well, you're it, but there are ways to make it more efficient and services like ours you can tap into. So your initial steps to get started, or I won't ask for hands up. I was just looking down at another screen there. Who's ever seen a situation where someone's gone along to a conference, nice junket somewhere, and someone's talked about some social media platform or all of them, and you've got really excited and you've signed up for, let's say it's Twitter, and you did a bit of tweeting, and then a week or 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever later, you thought, I don't know, I don't have the time, I don't see the benefit, and you stopped doing it. Not a very good look. You would have been better off never starting it. So if you're one of those people, how do you get your momentum back? Number 1, get clear on your strategy. So if you're unclear on your strategy, talk to us. It's what we do as part of the Modern Marketing Academy, or even one-on-one consultations that are available if you want them. Decide, in light of your strategy, which social media platforms that you'll be using. Decide within your team internally and also externally with other providers who's going to be involved in your social media activities. You can even map out a workflow. Who's going to come up with ideas for what to curate, who's going to actually publish it or approve it. Just decide. It's just like any other function in a business. Who's going to do it? Who's going to do what steps? Because it does matter. Get the right apps in place for your efficiency. You don't want to get, I call it evaluation fatigue. Now, I've been a long time sufferer of evaluation fatigue, and that's when you've got a lot of different free trials that then turn into paid trials after 14 or 30 days, and you've got all these apps going, and you're not really fully utilizing them all. That's not good. You're better off going, all right, we'll just take this person's recommendation, and I could go evaluate 6 different social media dashboards, for example, but what the hang, we'll just hitch our wagon to that one and use that. But either way, go through that evaluation process yourself, or just make the decision and say, okay, team, here's what we're using for social media curation. We're going to use Snipply. We're going to use this social media dashboard, and just stick to it and put that in your intranet or wiki as a standard operating procedure. Now, feel free, of course, to explore our social media update service. So to recap, what that'll just do for you is it'll make your content curation happen automatically for you each day. Now, what we do is we imagine, and it's easy for us to imagine because we are these people. We imagine what? A business owner, small business operator, entrepreneur, someone who wants to get ahead professionally in their career, in their business, someone who has to manage people, hire, fire, mentor people, and also, mum and dad investors, what they'd be interested in to manage their money and cash flow, get ahead in life. And they're the sorts of articles we go looking for you. So if you're a highly specialized firm in a vertical market, well, this service probably isn't for you. But if you target business owners and mum and dad investors, that's who this service with its publishing targets. And you also now get access to the Paradox Social app, which is mind-blowingly useful. It's kind of like 3 apps in one. So in addition to that app, if you happen to use Paradox Social, you'll still use the native apps on your smartphone, at least for Twitter and LinkedIn and the other platforms. Alrighty. Whew. So apologies for going what will be ultimately 10 minutes over. Let's just do a very quick 2 polls to finish with. Let's very quickly vote. Answer all that applies. Which social media platforms are you using now? And let's have a look. So please grab your mouse or trackpad or delegate to someone in the room to do it for you. Which social media platforms are you using? And let's get an idea of the many, many people in this webinar of what's happening out there in the accountants and advisors space around that. So just a few more of you to vote. Okay. And I'll just share that now. Share results. Okay. So 70% are using LinkedIn, not surprisingly. 60% Twitter, 60% Facebook. It would be interesting to see whether Facebook is being used for business or just personal. Google Plus, 15%, Instagram, 5%, and other, 15%. Interesting. And lastly, and I am keeping my eye out for questions, and I'll keep an eye out in Slack too for you, Tiff, to message me. Let us know what assistance you'd like from us. So if you'd like more information about the social media updates service, just tick that option. If you'd want more information about the Paradox Social app and how that works, let us know and we'll get in touch and we will demonstrate that to you. If you want just general assistance on your marketing and content, so whether that's social media, whether that's blogging, whether that's email newsletters, let us know and we can do that. If you tick the general assistance side, we'll step you through our marketing gap analysis. So our marketing gap analysis is just how we do an evaluation to make sure that what you're looking for in your marketing and what we provide is a fit, because we don't do everything. And in certain areas, we'll refer you on to others within our Paradox preferred partner network of other specialists in specific areas of marketing that we know do awesome, let's say, design work or websites or specific techie aspects. Cool. All right. So thanks everyone for taking part today. Tiff, any more questions? Nope. Okay. All good. Thank you for staying with me to go slightly over time. I trust that today you've learned something, even if it is just that MindMeister can be used to present webinars. There's our contact details on screen. We'll be in touch based on what you ticked in the poll there, but you can email us anytime at grow@practiceparadox.com.au or just directly book a time straight into our calendar on our Contact Us page. And we look forward to those of you who ticked those first few options to stepping you through that gap analysis and getting that momentum into or back into your marketing. Bye for now.